It's time for another update on my thermally modified wood experiments. I have a couple samples here, ash in the front, poplar in the back. This piece is unbaked, as is that one. And you might notice that on this piece of ash, it's considerably darker on this side than on the left. And the same thing with the piece of poplar. And this has been a problem when I have the oven filled with wood. I put spacers in between it and stack it up to the top. And then some of the pieces just come out burned on one side and almost untouched on the other. And this is because I'm using a conventional oven. A conventional oven has the burners on the top and on the bottom, and you turn on the oven and they heat up, normally the bottom one, unless you have it set to broil. And the problem with this approach is that the air doesn't circulate. So sometimes the hot air gets trapped on one side and ends up, wherever the air happens to flow, will end up darkening that piece of wood more than areas where the air isn't flowing quite as well. So, good time to give a shout out to my wife, who has been very patient and supportive in my experiments. And to reward her for her generosity, I decided to buy her this brand new convection oven. Now, the difference between a convection oven and a conventional oven is that with the conventional one, you're going to have normally a burner on the bottom and one on the top for broiling. This one doesn't have a burner on the bottom. You still have one on the top for broiling, but the main source of heat comes from behind that fan. And the fan is a key component of this oven because you never have direct heat on anything that you're cooking. The air circulates starting from behind the fan and then goes throughout the oven to make sure that whatever you're baking, a cake or whatever, has an even temperature. So, I think we're going to try this again. For this batch, I'm going to use some ash that I cut out of a tree in a friend's yard. And this is some very straight-grained ash because instead of cutting it with the bandsaw or the chainsaw, I split it. I might do a video on that technique later. It should be interesting to see how this looks when it's done. Various thicknesses and widths, so it's going to be tricky to get all of these to cook evenly. Let's give it a shot. Well, I think that should just about do it. Let's start the bitting at 250 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes to get the wood up to an even internal temperature. Alright, that was 45 minutes at 275 degrees. Now I'm going to bump it up to 375 for another 2 hours, and that should get us pretty close to finished. I ended up leaving it in for a little bit longer, for approximately 3 hours at 375 degrees, and that's what we got. So I think I'll just grab these guys and lay them out in the workshop and see how they look. Well, this seems to have worked out much better than the last time I did it. This is going from top to bottom in the pile, and looks like the color is pretty consistent throughout. This is an unbaked piece of ash, just to see the color difference. And I wasn't shooting for anything real dark, I just wanted to do the basic thermal modification. And you see on the bottom here, these faces were facing down in the oven against the metal base, so I think that's why they're a little bit darker. But really not too bad. I mean, a little bit of darkness on the outside, but it doesn't look like it really went all the way through. Maybe a little bit on that one, but just in the corner. But I think once I plane that down, that's probably not going to show up too much. So now I'm going to run this one over to the miter saw and just see if the heat was able to get all the way to the center of that 2.5 inch thick piece of wood. Well, that's the end result, and I think it looks pretty good. This is the inside of the piece, and that was the original outside. So it's a little bit darker, but not by much. I was mainly concerned about having the outside have a dark ring around it, and then a light, cool center, kind of like a microwave hot pocket. This seems to have worked out pretty well, so I'm pretty sure this served my purpose for now, and hopefully it was helpful to you as well. So, lesson learned for the day: don't be cheap, go buy your wife a new oven. Have fun.